For years, Russia treated Crimea as the center of its Black Sea power. Sevastopol was the fortress, the fleet was the weapon, and Moscow appeared to control the waters around it. That equation has changed. Ukraine's attacks have pushed major Russian naval assets away from Crimea toward Novorossiysk. But moving the fleet does not solve Russia's deeper problem. The Black Sea has only one maritime gateway to the Mediterranean, the Bosporus and Dardanelles. And both are controlled by Turkey. That gives Ankara something far more valuable than another warship. It gives Turkey leverage over the entrance and exit of an entire theater of war. Since Russia's invasion in 2022, Turkey has applied the Montreux Convention to restrict the passage of warships belonging to the belligerents. The consequence is enormous. Russia cannot simply bring replacement warships from its northern, Baltic, or Pacific fleets into the Black Sea. Every major naval loss therefore becomes much harder to replace. But Turkey's leverage goes beyond military vessels. Russian oil, grain, commercial shipping and shadow fleet tankers moving through the Black Sea all depend on the same maritime gateway. And now, that economic lifeline is under growing pressure. The clearest warning came from Turkey's oil trade. Reuters reported on August 14 that no shipments of Russia's flagship Urals crude were scheduled for Turkey during August. Russian oil imports had already fallen sharply in July. Turkey bought roughly 1.2 million tons of Russian crude in June. That dropped to about 900,000 tons in July. Black Sea deliveries fell even more dramatically, from around 600,000 tons to approximately 300,000 tons. Then August arrived. No scheduled Urals cargo. Only about 200,000 tons of Black Sea crude were expected to reach Turkey, and that oil was Kazakh crude transiting through a Russian port rather than Russian origin crude. That distinction matters. Turkey was once one of Russia's most important remaining European area customers. After Europe turned away from Russian crude in 2022, Turkish refineries became a crucial outlet for Moscow. Now that outlet is under severe pressure. And the immediate reason is sitting directly in the Black Sea. Ukrainian drone strikes have repeatedly targeted Russian naval and energy infrastructure around Novorossiysk. Commercial shipping has also faced growing danger. Turkish-linked vessels have been caught in the expanding risk zone. Ankara responded by warning that attacks on commercial vessels were becoming unacceptable. Turkey temporarily restricted commercial traffic heading toward Novorossiysk and pushed for a broader moratorium on attacks against shipping in the Black Sea. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan made Ankara's assessment clear: the conflict was no longer confined to ports and warships. Commercial vessels were increasingly becoming part of the danger zone. That creates a vicious cycle for Moscow. Russia needs Novorossiysk to export energy. Ukraine can threaten the infrastructure supporting those exports. Turkey controls the maritime gateway through which much of that commerce ultimately moves. And Turkish buyers can choose alternative suppliers if Russian cargoes become too risky. This is why the decline in Russian oil purchases cannot simply be dismissed as a normal market fluctuation. There was already another pressure building underneath it. Last year, Western sanctions targeted major Russian energy companies, while European restrictions made it increasingly difficult for fuel produced from Russian crude to enter the European market. Turkey's major refineries had already been reducing their dependence on Russian supplies. Tüpraş, for example, had sharply cut Russian imports. The Black Sea attacks accelerated that existing trend. And Turkey is now demonstrating that it has alternatives. Reuters trade data indicates Turkish buyers have been increasing purchases from countries such as Brazil and Guyana. Those Atlantic suppliers offer crude grades that can work with Turkey's existing refinery infrastructure. The United States has also become a major crude supplier to Turkey. Other sources include Iraq, Kazakhstan, Libya, Norway, and Saudi Arabia. So Ankara is not facing a choice between Russian oil and an energy shortage. It is choosing diversification. That distinction is crucial. Turkey has not formally declared an economic war on Russia. Ankara continues to maintain significant commercial and energy relations with Moscow, including natural gas links. But strategic dependence is being reduced. And while Turkey's economic relationship with Russia is cooling in one area, its military relationship with Ukraine is moving in the opposite direction. The latest reported package involves approximately $300 million worth of American-origin weapons being transferred from Turkish stocks to Ukraine, including ATACMS missiles, M270 launch systems and large quantities of artillery ammunition. That would represent a significant expansion of Turkey's role as a military intermediary. And the relationship is not limited to ammunition. Turkey has become deeply involved in Ukraine's defense industry. Bayraktar drones became one of the earliest symbols of Ukraine's resistance. Turkish defense companies have continued cooperation with Kyiv, including plans involving local production and advanced drone technology. Ukraine is also developing naval power in Turkey. 2 Ada-class corvettes are being built for the Ukrainian Navy. The Hetman Ivan Mazepa has undergone sea trials, while the Hetman Ivan Vyhovsky is expected to follow. These ships cannot simply sail into the Black Sea during the current war because Turkey's interpretation and enforcement of the Montreux Convention restricts belligerent warship passage. But that creates another strategic calculation. The ships can be built now. The crews can train now. The Ukrainian Navy can prepare now. If a ceasefire or peace agreement changes the legal conditions, a more capable Ukrainian naval force could already be waiting. Turkey is therefore influencing the Black Sea from several directions simultaneously. It controls the maritime gateway. It is helping Ukraine build military capability. It is supporting maritime security cooperation with Romania and Bulgaria. And it remains central to diplomatic initiatives designed to prevent the Black Sea from becoming completely closed to commercial traffic. This is where the economic pressure on Moscow becomes particularly important. Russia's wartime finances are already under strain. Oil and gas revenues have fallen sharply, while military spending continues consuming an enormous portion of the federal budget. Regional governments have begun cutting recruitment bonuses for contract soldiers. Some regions have delayed or reduced payments. Military-industrial companies have struggled with cash flow problems. And recruitment has reportedly weakened despite higher financial incentives. The Kremlin therefore faces an uncomfortable equation. It needs more soldiers. It needs more weapons. It needs more money. But the cost of generating each of those things is rising. Russia can still redirect oil toward China and India. Those markets absorb the overwhelming majority of Russian seaborne crude exports. But replacing a nearby customer with distant Asian buyers comes with costs. Longer voyages. Higher tanker expenses. Greater insurance risk. More dependence on the shadow fleet. And stronger bargaining power for the buyers. If Russia has fewer customers, Beijing and New Delhi gain leverage. Moscow can preserve export volumes by offering deeper discounts, or protect prices by cutting production. Either option puts pressure on revenue. That is why Turkey's shrinking purchases matter even if Russia can technically sell the barrels elsewhere. The issue is not simply volume. It is margin. It is logistics. It is leverage. And it is risk. The same logic applies to the Black Sea Fleet. Russia still possesses a powerful navy. But naval power is not just about how many ships exist on paper. It is also about where those ships can operate, how quickly they can be replaced, and whether reinforcements can reach the theater. For Russia, the Montreux Convention has transformed the Black Sea into a strategically isolated naval environment. A damaged frigate cannot simply be replaced by another frigate sailing in from the Baltic. A destroyed landing ship cannot easily be replaced from the Pacific. That makes every Ukrainian strike more consequential. And this is where Turkey's position becomes unique. Ankara is not merely watching the war from the sidelines. It sits directly on the gate through which the Black Sea connects to the global maritime system. The same geographic advantage that made the Ottoman Strait strategically important for centuries now gives modern Turkey extraordinary influence over Russia, Ukraine, and NATO simultaneously. Turkey can restrict warship access while preserving commercial navigation. It can cooperate militarily with Ukraine while maintaining economic ties with Russia. It can participate in NATO while pursuing its own regional diplomacy. And it can use the Black Sea as leverage without needing to dominate it militarily. That is the real significance of the current shift. Russia entered the war believing that its Black Sea fleet would give it overwhelming regional power. Ukraine has steadily challenged that assumption. Now Russia's fleet is operating from a more constrained position, its energy infrastructure is under attack, and one of its most important remaining oil customers is rapidly diversifying away from Russian crude. At the same time, Turkey is helping build Ukraine's future military capabilities while controlling the legal gateway through which warships would have to pass. Moscow can still compensate for some of these losses. China and India remain enormous markets. Russian oil exports have not disappeared. Turkey has not abandoned Russia completely. And the August oil figures could still change if prices, discounts, or security conditions shift. So this is not the end of Russian influence in the Black Sea. But it is a major change in the balance of leverage. The Black Sea is no longer simply a Russian naval playground centered on Crimea. It is becoming a contested economic and military corridor in which Turkey controls the most important geographic switch. That is the strategic paradox. Russia may still have the larger fleet. Ukraine may still have the more aggressive strike campaign. NATO may still possess the broader military alliance. But Turkey holds the gate. And as long as the war continues, whoever controls that gate possesses influence far beyond the size of its coastline or fleet. The question now is how far Ankara intends to use that leverage, and whether the Black Sea emerging after this war will be shaped more by the Russian Navy, the Ukrainian military, or the Turkish state standing between them.